Hello everyone, this is the first introduction that I'd like to give you guys to a project I've been working on for a few months. This is a game, if you couldn't tell from it. I actually watched a series, it's a reality TV series that came onto Netflix a while ago called Alone. And the idea was that people were taken to the Arctic, the frozen north, and they had to survive completely on their own wits for a time. And whoever survived the longest took home the prize. But they were all completely alone. They were all given their own little island or space out there, and it was interesting to watch how long people survived and how long they could battle the cold and the lack of food and all the hardships that happened. So this game is my reimagining of that sort of event. But you as an individual have to survive for 100 days. But I'd like to share with you what I've created so far and where I'm going with the story. So the general game goes like this. In the top left hand corner we see some stats, which it includes the day, the time, the weather, your body temperature, and your weight. If your body temperature gets too cold, you freeze to death. The weight at 150, you'll have organ failure and you'll die. These are all just placeholder numbers. I'll refine them later on and see where they go. But those are right now the first two failure conditions. You get too cold or you get too skinny. Okay? In the top right hand corner you'll see some resources you start out with. You might have nets and traps in order to catch food for yourself, wood for a fire or shelter, as well as food. And right now it's a very rough estimation of food. Imagine them as units of 1,000 calories or 1,000 kilocalories, whichever it is. Meaning you use about 2 to 3 a day depending on how much activity you do. So here's the game loop, and I'm only going to do a little bit of it, even though the game will go to 100 days. I'll show you just a few to see kind of the gist of the game. Okay? So I click Start Game, and it gives me a lot of options to do each day. Fishing, hunting, making a trap or making a net, gathering wood, and resting for the day. So the first thing we're going to do, because it is 45 degrees out, and it's only going to get colder, we're going to gather some wood. And each time you gather some wood, we notice that the sun progresses, and it continues to progress as we gather wood throughout the day. And we have, we'll say 8 wood right there. That's enough that we can build a fire, and you see a little fire icon that pops up right there. And we're going to build a rudimentary shelter, just a quick lean-to. But the day's almost done at 6 p.m., so we're going to go ahead and rest for the rest of the day. At the end of the day, you notice the sun resets to the left-hand side of the screen. It's now day 2, 6 a.m., and our food has gone down to 3. Our wood has gone down by 1 because we've been burning it. But otherwise, we're fine. Okay, so on day 2, now that we have enough wood for a couple of days of fire, let's go ahead and try fishing. Fishing is the easiest way to get sustenance that will last you for a while, although it won't be very good. Although there is, of course, still chance of failure. So let's go ahead and fish. And that took most of the morning, it looks like, and you failed to catch anything. Better luck tomorrow. Well, that's a little bit scary, right? Because we only have 3 food left. But there's not enough time to go fishing anymore, so let's go ahead and gather a little more wood and rest for the rest of the day. Okay, so it's the next morning at 6 a.m. and it looks like the weather has changed. Now the weather effects, of course, this is a work in progress, will be shown a little bit better, but it says it's now rainy and 44 degrees out. Rain changes your chances of being successful at any activity, especially hunting, but we should be able to still catch some fish, so let's try that out. There we go, we got a monster carp. Okay, good, and our food has gone back up to 4.5. So you see that throughout the game, we're going to fish and hunt, try to build up our food stores in order to be able to survive for the future. So, we're not going to show you too much more on this screen here, except to say that as we gather wood, and because we have enough food, I'm just going to blitz through gathering wood for a couple of days. Okay? And you see the weather changes and our food goes down. But we now have 21 wood, and I can build shelter again, and it upgrades my shelter from a small lean-to to a straw hut. And here, we can actually upgrade it again, and I'll show you the picture for the log cabin which you can get, but that requires 50 wood. And 50 wood, of course, takes a long time to gather, which makes it a lot harder to get early game. But we're going to go ahead and just rest for the day here, and I'll show you what the failure condition is, because we're going to start resting, and you see we're going through days very quickly now, and our fire went out. Now, when the fire goes out, we aren't being able to stay warm enough anymore, and you see our body temperature is starting to fall. And right now, the body temperature falling doesn't do anything except at 75 degrees in which you die. Our weight falling also doesn't do anything until we hit 150 degrees in which we die. We'll talk about later about some other effects that will happen that aren't implemented yet. So I'm going to continue to rest for the day until we lose the game. Because we actually have a level 2 shelter here, it keeps us warm enough that we don't die immediately. In fact, if we gathered one wood and built a fire for one day, our body temperature would skyrocket right back up. But let's just sit here and starve to death. It's actually incredible how long we are lasting. Okay, so we're at 79 out of 100, which means we've really almost made it already. Our weight's at 162, so that's getting a little bit scary, but I think we're going to make it. But our body temperature's about to hit that breaking point. So we're going to rest for the day. 75.2 and 74.9. Okay, so we finally froze to death. It is 23 degrees out and rainy, which will later be snow, right? But that's what it's like in this game when you lose. Now let me show you a little bit about my plans for the future for the game, the kind of tuning I want to do, and kind of my vision for where this game is going. Welcome to the Untitled Survival Game! Insert epic music. Okay, and I call this a light fantasy roguelike survival game. What does it mean to be a light fantasy roguelike survival game? Magic will be present, but it's not going to be a major role in the game. You're not going to be lighting your fire using magic, but there'll be some mystical elements out there, such as fantastic monsters and enemies that may exist. Which means you might not see a bear, you might see an owl bear, or a creature that can detect your thoughts, or something like that. You might find ruins of long-lost civilizations. If you die, you start over from the beginning. This is not a game that is very forgiving. Second, it's turn-based action. There's no quick fighting, there's no running away from monsters. You have to know and intentionally click on every button. If you die, that means you made bad decisions, and you have to go back to the beginning and start over. It means there's a lot of random events in environment. That means that no two runs will be the same, and it means that you could run the game again and see something completely different. And the third element of this game is it is a survival game. And what are survival games? It means that we're dealing with a game with resource management. What kind of survival elements do we have in the game? There's two that are currently in the game, and I've already mentioned them already. First is the body temperature, and second is weight loss. I have a huge list of features that I'm constantly putting in. So here's some of those upcoming survival elements. First one is exhaustion, and that's coming next. Exhaustion allows us to decide when we're going to sleep. Instead of it just teleporting us from evening to morning, we can stay up late so we can get some good hunting in, or we can get up early so we can get some good fishing in. But it also means you have to manage when you sleep, because if you're exhausted, your chances of catching an animal go down when you're too exhausted. Or you might make mistakes, you might get injured more often if you're too exhausted. So you have to make sure that your energy stays up. Next is your thirst. We have to make sure that we get a good water supply, that we can store that water, that you can purify your water, and that you can drink it. Third is predators. Right now, hunting is really simple. You click the hunt button and you see if you catch something. Well, what happens if you do see a bear and they can attack you? Which leads, of course, to injuries. How do you heal from an injury? How do you rest? How does that affect what activities you can do? How does that affect your travel speed, for example? Third is the ecosystem and migration. In the future, there will be an ecosystem, which means for every deer you hunt, there'll be one less deer in the wild. There'll also be migration patterns, which means they'll move from one area to another, and you'll need to track them to find them. Next, we'll have to track body fat and muscle. Right now, when you hit 150 pounds, you die. Well, the truth is that when you're losing a lot of weight, when you're losing just body fat, it's not really an issue. But once you have a lot of muscle loss, that's when you start having organ failure. And so you're going to have to track your body fat separate from the muscle, and when you get food, things like fish and bears that have a lot of extra fat to them will be much more nutritious for you and will allow you to be more healthy than something like only eating venison, which is very, very lean and won't protect you against weight loss. And last, there's food spoilage. Some food doesn't last forever, and bagging a really good moose doesn't help you if it's not freezing outside yet and you can't store it for long. There'll be food preservation techniques, and we'll go from there. So this should give you a good idea of the kind of survival elements that I want to have in the game, and the reason why the game seems really easy right now. Because once we added all these other systems, then you'll be managing enough things that it becomes very difficult to survive for the full 100 days. But once I have all these survival elements in, that's kind of the base layer of the game. That's the game you're playing. But what you're experiencing is the story mode. The very first time you play the game, you're going to be playing as a specific character. You're going to be playing with an exile. This man did something wrong and he was kicked out of his country, and he has to survive for 100 days. And if he survives for 100 days, he's allowed to come home. And apparently surviving in the frozen north for 100 days means that you've been blessed by the gods and they wish for you to live. But if you claim victory, you will unlock other characters who are allowed to experience more of the story. These other characters will have special abilities and goals. What this means is that they will, unlike the exile, probably come with more resources. However, they will want to accomplish more things than just surviving for 100 days. And what that means then is that as basic survival then becomes easier because they have more resources or more tools or are more knowledgeable, that means other tasks take their place. They have to accomplish other things in order to win the game. This explorer may come with some extra food. They may come with some traps, but they'll have to delve a dungeon and fight monsters, which means the real survival aspect for the explorer may not be, do you have enough food to eat, but can you heal yourself enough after you get mauled by the bear to survive? So that's a general overview of my light fantasy roguelike survival game. I hope it sounds exciting to you. I've really enjoyed working on it and learning more about HTML and JavaScript, which I've had to learn from scratch in order to build this so far. I've also had to learn how to do a little bit of art. I'm not an artist in any way, but I'd like to show off a few things that I've made, and I'm way too proud for how bad they look, but here they are. These are the 3 different buildings you can build. There's the tent at the very bottom left-hand corner. Then there's the straw hut, which you guys both saw in the game, as well as the log cabin, which we didn't quite get far enough to build. But all 3 of these are buildable in-game, and I made the art for them, as well as the fire down below, which I think it needs a little bit of tweaking. And of course in the background we see the trees, which are programmatically created in-game. If you have any comments, please let me know. Let me know if you think I've missed anything or there's any other cool elements that would be awesome in the game. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.